Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. So, you know how everyone always says, I'm a CEO, or maybe that they're the CEO of a company. Have you ever thought about hiring a CEO to run your business and you staying as the founder or the creative? Or maybe you've considered yourself being a CEO for someone else's business. Well, today I had the absolute pleasure of diving in with Ashley DeLuca, who is going to help to unpack for us everything you need to know about not only becoming a CEO, but also, most importantly, hiring and delegating to have a CEO run your company alongside you. Today, we talk about the role of a CEO in business growth, transitioning from entrepreneur to CEO, how to build trust and navigate founder to CEO dynamics, and ultimately how to collaborate together to have the most amount of impact. We also talk about in that dynamic between founder and CEO, what are the power of boundaries and emotional regulation? What are the key traits and skills to be an effective leader? And when and how should you hire a CEO for your business? Today is going to really expand the way that you think about operating a business. You most likely are founder, CEO, and every other title in your business right now. And today, I think, is really going to surprise you because Ashley gives a lot of curveballs that are really going to break down what we might perceive to be the right time or the way that a CEO will look when they're onboarded into your business. So, without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ambitious. If you are watching this, you are seeing that I am joined by another beautiful face today. And I'm so excited to welcome Ash to Ambitious because very quick story, another entrepreneur friend of mine was talking about his business and was like, it's just exceptional. And this is what's working and this is what's not. And we were diving into all things business. And he's like, but none of this would be possible without Ashley. And I was like, okay, who's Ashley? He's like, she's my CEO. She makes the entire thing run. And he went on a tangent about how she had completely changed his business, the support she brought to his business, what it's been able to do since introducing her. And I was like, okay, like tell me more. I'm super interested. And so obviously, since that point, I've had the absolute pleasure of getting to know Ashley deeper in her role within the business and all the things that she actually does, and was very excited to have her join me today to talk about all things of what it is and means to be a CEO in a business and to be in that role and that title. So Ash, welcome to Ambitious.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor.
Yeah,
Such an honor to be
excited.
joined. So
I'm
thank you.
excited. I'm excited. I feel like this is a topic, at least for me, that I feel like I don't see covered a lot on podcasts because I feel like CEOs are not always like in the limelight. Like I feel like the founder, the visionary is always the one that people are like, okay, like tell me the whole thing. But I'm like, you literally run the machine. So I am just so excited to dive in, but I think a great place to start would be for anybody who's listening who's like, okay, like Ashley, who are you? Tell me a little bit about your story. Give me a little one-on-one on like how did this even come to be that you are the CEO of a business?
Well, let me tell you what, it was never on my vision board. I remember back in like 2018, right before I had my son, I had went through the process of mapping out Ashley's 5-year vision. And at that time, I had a huge gray corkboard and I had done index cards. And I was like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. I had like 12 of them, and none of them were CEO. And so for me, entrepreneurship started off originally with just a lot of dissatisfaction. I was very unfulfilled in my corporate role. I felt very much so like I was overlooked. And I was trying to apply for roles that I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do your social media. I want to do your web design. And I had self taught myself all of it from library books when I was 14.
Mm.
And so I was like, I can do it, but I don't have the degree. I can do it, but I don't have enough experience because I'm 21.
Mm.
And so my best friend Cece at the time, we were sitting there at Panera Bread, and she, I always say, is double the age, double the wisdom, because I was in my 20s, she was in her 40s. And she was like, Ash, why don't you just go make it? Like, why do you need somebody else to give you the permission slip to start doing web design? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So that was the day my first business was ever born. And Ashley went through the process of doing Craigslist ad searching. And I don't know how I wasn't kidnapped or killed. I'm going to be honest. I met up with random men at Panera
Okay.
to talk about their business and their goals and their vision for their web design. And it was a journey. It was a journey of me being able to trust myself to find fulfillment in what I was doing and to be able to expand and grow in like a very beautiful way.
Mm. I love Panera Bread, by the way. Like, I
Oh,
love that you use
so
that
good.
as your office. I'm so excited by that. I'm like, the people who worked there must have been like, "Look at this girl taking meetings." I love it.
I
I love
know, right? Yeah, I was like, I don't know what type of meetings they were thinking I was taking, but I was definitely taking marketing meetings. That
She's
was for
taking
sure.
meetings now, that's all that matters, she's taking meetings. Okay, so you go into obviously, you're in corporate, you realize and you know that there's more that you could do and that you wanna desire to achieve. Then
Mhm.
you obviously go into entrepreneurship. And so how do we go from entrepreneurship to being a CEO of a business now?
So I went through the process of leaving my full time job in 2018 when I had my son. I made the dedication. I was like, nope, like I am going to stay home with you. Like that's how we're going to live life. And ever since he was a baby, we've always done entrepreneurship together. Always. Like he was always in his little bassinet and I was always working. And like we made it work. And he knows like when mom's on Zoom calls, he can come in and give the heart and then he goes.
Mhm.
He gives the heart and goes. And so for me, it was very much so a journey of expanding the business and doing it all by myself. And then coming to a point where I was on Facebook and I saw a Facebook post that one of my friends had shared, and it was a video clip of George. Now, if you know current George versus this version of George that I met, this was very much so like hard and as masculine, very straight to the point, but like still very teddy bear of truth. And he was
Mm,
talking about in this video about how email marketing needs to be relationship based and why that would be.
yeah.
And at that point, I had pivoted my business from web design to email because I love to write. Like creative writing was something that I always enjoyed as a child. And I was like, perfect. People can like pay me to write, like sign me up.
Yeah.
And so I instantly fell in love with George. I was like, I don't know what this juice is, but I want to go drink it. And so I joined his Facebook group. I like listened to his podcast. I did like all the things.
Yeah.
And I started first and foremost as a course member. So I started just like bringing in all of his courses and all stuff. And he was so kind and like bought time on his calendar. He gifted me one of his courses. Like I feel like he planted the seed long before either of us knew that that was a seed that we were both going to harvest together.
Mhm.
So coming into a couple years later, like being part of his mastermind, I'm like fast forwarding, but like you get the
Yeah,
gist of like
yeah.
we're building this relationship together essentially. I ended up getting hired on his team to do social media. And then we got to a point where his current CEO had to step out. And he was, and this is me saying what I felt like he was going through. He was basically like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Like, I have this social media guy and I have this video editor. How are we running this business?
Yeah.
So he ended up slacking me and he was like, hey, do you want to be my CEO? And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, I don't know how to do that, but I
I
can
love
figure it out.
love the honesty in the answer. Love that. No idea how to do that, but, like, interested. Tell me more. I love
Yeah.
that answer. I have no
Yeah.
idea. That's what I
So
would've said. That's what I would've said.
I
Yeah.
was literally staring at the message. I remember the exact moment it was because I was in my parents' basement because I had just moved out of my previous house
Mhm.
and I was going through my divorce. And I was just like, are you sure you want me? Like, I'm literally in the middle of like an entire huge like life transition. I'm
Yeah.
literally a mess. I'm in therapy basically every other day, and you want me to be your CEO? And I was like, okay. And basically, like from that moment on, of me creating that commitment of like, I'm always going to figure it out with you.
Yeah.
And like, as long as you promise that you'll always figure it out with me,
Yep. We're in it.
we're in it. And
Yeah.
we've been in it for like 3 years now. So, yeah.
Incredible. And I also feel like I just wanted to take a second too to just acknowledge what you even just said, which was the idea that you have raising a baby at home with you while you're working, while going through divorce and moving. Like that on top of now starting a new position. Like how would you say if someone, because I've had a lot of conversations with people who are in that season, is there anything that you might recommend to someone who's in that time where they're just like, I feel like I'm in a tilt-a-whirl, but yet there's a lot of movement and momentum happening like in the business, but there's just a
Mhm.
lot happening in life right now?
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing is that like when he had asked me, I also had like a pretty full client load. Like I was
Mm,
still running my own business, like
okay.
my own email marketing agency, while also doing his social media like on the side. So
Got it.
then there was this like transition period of like, I don't even know like how we're going to do this. And for me, it took, as type A is what I would say I am, it took a lot of planning, a lot of intentional planning in regards to with how I was spending my time, how I was making use of that time. And for me at that time, it was a lot of late nights because I would wait for my son to go to sleep. And
Mm,
then I would come on and like do 2 hours of focus work and get so much done in that 2 hours.
yeah.
And just also recognizing like when is your most productive time, right? Like not forcing it to be at 5 a.m. if you can't even keep your eyes open long enough to drink your morning coffee, and finding like what is this season right now. And like I don't work past 8 o'clock at this point ever. I can't stay awake past 8 o'clock. I'm in my bed with
Yeah.
my Kindle at this point.
Yeah.
So it's like also recognizing that like those late nights were definitely a season for me and they served me really well to then get me to this point now.
Mm, I love that. And something I wanted to kinda unpack with you was when you had said, like, "I don't know how to do this," or "I've never done this before." Because I think for me, I might think, "Okay, well, my normal thought process before I had been exposed to, like, hearing all of the things that you manage and that you do and that you've done, I used to think that, like, to have a CEO meant you were hiring a CEO from another business, as in, like, someone else was a CEO somewhere else, and you're bringing them in to now be the CEO in your business. But obviously, you weren't starting in being a CEO elsewhere, you were starting in entrepreneurship, and so I'm curious, like, do you think for someone hiring that, like, that's even really necessary? Like, does someone have to even have the role or, like, the resume, if you will, of being a CEO elsewhere? Or can they really just have, like, the entrepreneur skills that come with, like, the grit and the building and then transfer that to a business?
Definitely the latter, 100%. Because, when I think about when somebody comes in from necessarily more so of a degree or a position versus the, like obviously the ambition, right? The grit, the willpower, the desire, the discipline, I think can often far outweigh what someone's done in the past.
Mm, okay. Yeah, because I think that that's the biggest curiosity for most people is, like, also even as you said, like, being inside of his program, the other question comes up, which is, like, where do I even find somebody? Because, like, for you, obviously, this wasn't on it wasn't on the 12 things on the vision board, and so
No.
I'm curious, like, if someone's listening and they're thinking, "Okay, like, I would love to have a CEO." Where does that even happen? In the sense of, like, if you were gonna recommend to a startup business or a growing business to start to find someone, where might you recommend that they find someone? Or is it really recommended in your lens to, like, go right underneath your nose? You might have, like, a gem of a human being sitting there kind of, like, perfect for this opportunity.
Ooh, yeah. So I think first and foremost, I do believe that people are planted in our life for a reason, always.
Mhm,
And oftentimes, I do feel very inclined to state that, like, a lot of times, the people that you least expect, but still have those qualities, are the people that will then go to you with the next level.
mhm,
And so, like, when we think about like filling a CEO position, for me, it would be like really think about like, well, why? And also not just even why, but also like what skill sets would then pair with mine, because I feel like the number one reason why George and I work is because we're polar opposites. Like he's
yeah,
very like Mr. Unicorn, go with the wind wherever life takes him, like he's here for, and I'm very much so like running behind him with the map, being like, wait, how does this point go to this point? And I got the
yeah,
Sharpies and I'm erasing and I'm like, oh, like all the things.
yeah.
And so it's like, if you're the planner, you don't want to bring another planner in. Y'all will outplan each other all day and not get anything done. And then
Mhm,
it's also very much so like if you have somebody who's very type A, you don't want two type A's running the same company. Like you need a
right,
type A and a type B, right?
right.
And like, I'll even take like the human design side, right? Like he's a generator, I'm a projector. Like he's a generator of all the ideas, and I'm the projector, and I see the vision and I make it happen.
Yep.
And so oftentimes I do believe that a lot of times there are people that are already in our world, because I do believe that we do attract the next person that we need in the next part of our journey.
Mm. Well, like, I think that distinction is huge because I think that a lot of people don't know the difference between being a founder and being a CEO of a business. Like, all these terms kind of get, like, combined together, like the operator, the CEO, the
Yeah.
founder, and I think it's really important that people recognize that they are really completely different, like, avatars, if I was to kind of put it that way, of the different types, like, personality types you need for the business to be successful, because when you're first starting as a business owner, you're the founder, the visionary, the creator, the innovator, right? But I think a lot of people and I don't, this is just my personal opinion, but I think a lot of people don't realize that they're not born operators. They're really creative. They're super visionary, and they
Mhm.
can really see where the business can go and have a lot of creative ideas. But to your point, I think sometimes it's recognizing what skills we don't have and then realizing, hey, you know what? You have great ideas and you're great at vision, but you don't necessarily lean or are inclined in the way of operating. Cause like since getting to know you, I'm like, your brain, I'm also a projector. Your brain works like my brain works in the sense of like the highlighters, the structure, the tables, the lists, like all of that stuff I nerd out on. But I feel like some people are not wired that way, and then they think about, "Okay, well, why is my business not growing?" And it's like, maybe that operation aspect is really missing. And so, like, for you guys, how does that relationship work between the founder and the visionary versus the operator? Like, how do you guys kind of respect your different categories or, like, start to work in harmony with each other to help the business grow?
Not without a lot of growing pains.
I'm obsessed
I
with the honesty. I'm obsessed with the honesty. So good.
We struggled. We struggled. I mean, this is my perspective. He may say totally differently. He might say like it was like rainbows. But like for me, we struggled a lot in the first year, like of working together. And the reason why I bring this up is because I think every partnership comes with struggle as you meld together and create trust and respect and also understand where everybody is in their lanes. Because for me, I think starting off, like he had a completely different vision of what a CEO was based off of what
Mm.
I thought a CEO was. Because quite frankly, Ashley didn't really know what a CEO was, but it also wasn't like Ashley coming into a large company and having tons of ideas that were magically going to work. I was like, wait a second, I don't know what I'm doing, remember? And so that first year was very much so like having a lot of grace for each other and having the honest conversations where it's just like, hey, when you do this, this really irritates me and this doesn't support me. Can we do like potentially this or this? And
Mm.
so a lot of it is like a lot of redirection conversations. And I think that I would be doing people a disservice if I didn't actually speak to that and like share that, because a lot of times you think, oh, I'm going to hire this one person and this one person is going to change everything for me. And it's just going to be like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
It could. And I don't think there's anything wrong with there being lots of discussions, especially in the forefront, to be able to then be able to create the harmony that we have now because we've spent so much time together in communication. And I
Mm.
think that's the other part is like we communicate quite often and quite frequently.
Mhm.
And now, like, I've been blessed to be able to come to a point where I can be a lot more direct and specific because we've created that trust where I
Right.
don't feel like I have to come in. And for me, it was people pleasing, like being able to like fluff basically the question of like, hey, I hope you're having an incredible, amazing day. No, 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 no. And then be like, here's the hard question. But you know what? I hope you have a great, amazing day. Now I just give them the hard question. And I'm like,
You're like, "Hey,
yeah,
quick question. Here's what it
here's
is."
what it is. Here's the
Yeah.
direction point.
Well, like
But I
you
think
said that
that's the
you
biggest
guys had different visions of what you thought a CEO might be. And so I'm curious, like for you, if someone's even thinking to themselves, okay, maybe I shouldn't say just, I am the innovator, I am the visionary for the business. And I'm thinking about maybe having a CEO come in. What is that person? Like if you were like in your experience now to kind of describe like, hey, if you're thinking about bringing in a CEO, this is what that actually means, not just like, hey, I'm delegating things off to somebody else,
thing.
but like, what does that actually mean to you now that you've kind of been in the weeds of it?
So the first word that comes to mind for me is like partner. I think that's the biggest thing. Like you guys are actually partners in joint decisions and you also equally take ownership. And
Mm.
so there's no negating, there's no back and forth, there's no like, well, I told you to do this and you decided to do this. It's like, no, like we're coming together and being able to then trust and make decisions off of that.
Right.
And so for me, a CEO is somebody who is just as enrolled in the vision as you are, who is willing to take the punch just as much as you are, and who will also go through the process of fighting for your vision as much as you will.
Mm. Okay.
And how they do that is up to you, right? You can decide who does the marketing, who's going to do the sales calls, who's going to do whatever, right? Like all of for me, the little things are the actual tasks. I think the most important part of like, especially when you're finding your person,
Yeah.
is what do they actually believe is possible? And will they also hold the faith for you?
Mm. That division of
Mhm.
responsibility is, and even partnership is huge, because I think something that I could see being a fear for some of my, like, massive controllers is, like, the idea that I'd love to have somebody else in the business with me, but thinking about me not having the full say makes them uncomfy. And then
Mhm.
I think there's the other side of the spectrum, which is somebody who's like, "I just want relief so I can just lean into the areas that I enjoy," which is the other thing I hear a lot, which is, "I love marketing, I love selling, or I love serving clients. I just wanna market and serve clients, and then the CEO does everything else."
Mhm.
So, when you talk about that kind of, like, division of responsibility, like, do you feel like a 50-50 is a good way to kind of approach a business? Or, like, do you think there's been situations where you're like, "Listen, like, this is just how it's gonna go down," and, like, do you ever kind of get that final hammer to be like, "This is just what we're doing?" Like, how do you guys navigate the decision making, I guess, is the thought process that I'm thinking about. How do we navigate decisions of who gets the final say between the founder or CEO when you have a CEO?
Mm. For us personally, it depends on the category. So, like, going to division for an example, generally speaking, for the most part, I would say I make 75% of the decisions in, like, the day-to-day operational pieces.
Mm,
George takes that other 25, which is like our client fulfillment, how we do client work, what does that look like, especially in like the coaching and things like that.
mhm,
And so originally it was definitely flip flopped where he was making 75, I was making 25. And it started off that way because of, again, that desire and need to control on his part, where I had to go through the process of creating enough trust between us
yeah,
for him to know that, like, oh, she's got me. Oh,
mhm,
like she is making the best decision for everybody involved. And it's not just like whatever is going to be best for her. Right.
yeah,
And so I feel like there's like repetition of trust that comes with that because it's like, I'm showing you that I'm committed. And like every single day, I will show you that I'm committed to this business.
mhm,
And so it's definitely with him being able to release control has then turned into 25-75. And I wouldn't necessarily even say that his 25% is like smaller in regards to with the grand scheme of things. I
mm,
would say that it's more so like the most impactful 25%, hands
yeah,
down, because it's with our one-on-one clients. And you know, the impact that they then create is so much greater than what I just create when I'm figuring out how do we want to do SOPs.
mm, yep. And I think the thing is with the roles, like, I love that you said, like, over time, because I think people like us are planners. I'm like, "Okay, like, this is the division, you take 25, I take 75," and, like, we're very structured in the way that we always, like, plan and create things. But I think, like, what you're saying is that there's really an evidence collection. The more evidence you have of, like, this person's got it, the more handoff can happen.
Correct.
And so I'm curious for someone just to set really fair expectations for people. Like, when we think about training and onboarding and all that stuff, like, what was that timeline? Like, were we talking, like, 60 days? Or are we talking, like, a year and a half for you guys to really feel like, "Okay, like, now we're in synergy?" Like, when you guys think about where you are now, how long would you say it took to kinda get to the harmony you're at?
Mm.
And maybe there were phases, maybe there
Yeah.
were phases of messiness in the middle.
Yeah, definitely lots of messy in the middle because I feel like in the past 3 years, like we've both grown exponentially.
Mm,
And because of our commitment to growth is the reason why we're at where we're at today. Like
mhm,
if we were both to have stayed the same where we were 3 years ago, like we wouldn't be in business together.
mm,
One of us would have like been like, peace, I'm done with you.
yeah,
you know? And so I would say like I started to feel fully committed and into it probably a year ago was when I fully was like, okay, I'm done with my other business. And
mm,
that was me coming forward. And like, it wasn't even a conversation we had. It was something I decided on my own was like, I'm telling you, I'm fully committed to this business. And yet I haven't actually fully committed to the business
mm,
entirely. And so releasing my side of it, like my business, like my other side of it is like when that transition really happened for me, where I was like, okay, I'm all in. Like there is nothing else, right? Like I'm not seeing no other businesses. Like I'm just seeing yours. So like,
we're monogamous, okay?
right, this is
Monogamous.
it. This is it. And so, yeah, it was very much so, I would say like a year ago. And so it's like 2 years of basically like constant communication, constant just
Mhm.
commitment, and constantly being in the weeds for sure.
And I'm thinking about the founder who's probably listening to this and thinking, okay, like I would consider having a CEO. I would love to kind of entertain what that looks like. That communication you talk about, if someone wants to have an Ashley on their team or as part of their vision, what is that? What do you need from them? Like, who does the founder need to be? How does the visionary need to operate? Like, if you were like, if I was going to have the best and I was going to create this ideal partner,
Mhm.
this is how I would recommend you to either prep yourself or to operate in this dynamic to like really allow someone like yourself to truly shine and help the business scale.
Yeah, so I think the most important part when it comes to communication is being clear with your CEO if you're in idea mode or like we're going to go execute this mode. Because a lot of our confusion would come in where he would bring me an idea and be like, so I'm thinking about making this page on the website, for an example. And then it'd be like, okay, yeah, done. And then I'd send him the link 30 minutes later. And he's like, well, that was just an idea. Like, I don't know. Like, he's like, how did you do that? And I was like, I don't know. Like, here it is, though. This is what
Yeah.
you just said you wanted.
Yeah.
So it's like, for me, what that would create though is that would create like a loop of just feeling like, oh my gosh, like I am always having to be on call. Like I always have to be ready for that next text message. Like I don't know when it's coming because we're 2 hours apart. So
Yeah.
it's like he's 2 hours behind me. So like I'm like snuggled up in my jammies and then he's like, hey, this website page. And I'm thinking it's an action
Uh,
versus an idea.
I
And
got it.
so being really clear when it comes to that, I think would have really supported both of us because I would do the same thing to him and be like, hey, no, 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 no. And then he'd be like, you want me to go record how many videos right now? And I'm like, oh no, like not right now. Like you can brush your hair, your non-existent hair,
Yeah.
you know? So I feel like for me, that is key for sure. Is like being very clear on what, as George says, like what playing field you're coming on for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that some people are naturally like, I know both of us are very much this way. Like, we're very much like builders. Like, if someone sends us an
Mhm.
idea, we're like, okay, great. Like, here's all the pieces we need. Here's the plan. Here's the timeline. Here's what could go wrong. We start to go into all the pieces we need to create it. And I think entrepreneurs have a tendency to do that. Like, they're constantly dreaming all the time. And so, because of that, it's like vision, vision, vision all day long that you're talking about. 98% of which never gets executed because it's all just talking about ideas, which kind of like pulls the thread of generating more. But I think for someone who is an operator, which is really what to me a CEO is, like the reason when I started to hear all the things, I was like, she's driving the ship. Like she's literally operating the team, everything. That to me was really what I saw CEOs to be, which is the fact that I kind of defined a CEO as like the person who was driving growth, who was managing team, who was overseeing the strategy, and then basically partnering with the founder to be like, hey, vision wise, what are you seeing? Like, give me your creative juices, basically, and using them, if I could, as almost like a pawn or like a puppet to get you where you needed to go. Because that person usually has brought a CEO in because they don't want to think about all of the structure and the team and all the pieces. And, one of the things that I learned in a lot of, my conversations was really truly how much you hold capacity for. Like clients, team, marketing, sales, like overall everything, like every bucket of the business. And so when you have someone like a personal brand who's the face, but yet you're the machine managing it all, how is that behind the scenes when you're like, I'm doing team, I'm doing all these things, but like the team may not necessarily even have a relationship with the founder, even though he's the face of the business. So like, how does it feel for you as like the lead of all of that to manage it and hold capacity for everything?
On some days, I'm like, let's go. Let's make it happen. Give me all the Alanis and coffee. Like, let's make it
Yes.
happen.
Yeah.
And then on other days, I feel like I go right back into that spot of like, who in the world am I to do all
Mm.
this? And am I actually truly capable of doing all this and holding all this?
Mm.
Because for me, I get overwhelmed when all the vision ideas come through. And like we even worked together with this in person in Montana when he came to the event. And I was like, hey, here's my 3 post-it notes of every idea I've ever been given in the past 3 months.
Yeah.
Can you help me sort this out? Like, can you help me with this? And so Yeah, I think I've definitely float between the 2. Like, I don't ever think I always have it all together, and I also at some days, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, like, I have enough evidence that I've built up in my little sunshine folder that, like, I can do this."
Yeah. Yeah, and I think on that note, I kinda wanna, like, almost switch gears because there's 2 people. There's the person who's like, "I wanna hire an Ashley. I
Mhm.
love my business, and I'm very much a visionary, and I love to create with the big ideas, but I'm not a born operator." And then there's the other person who I have had a lot of conversations with people who tell me that they love entrepreneurship, but they don't love being the visionary. Like, they don't love being the face, they don't love being the brand, they don't love certain aspects, but they love entrepreneurship and building businesses. So they're like, "I would
Mhm.
love to just be a CEO behind the scenes, and then I'll have somebody else who could be the forefront, and I get to really lean into the area that I love." And so if we're thinking about someone who kinda wants to be an Ashley, where do we start when it comes to, I have a business, I feel like I'd love to be the CEO of someone else's business. If you were gonna kind of recommend something to them, where would you recommend in the place of where to even start with maybe exploring that?
So the fun part is that my process is not replicatable. Like, you can't do the exact same things that I did in order to be able to get there because I don't recommend
Yeah.
it to anybody. So if I were to take like any human being and be like, okay, great, you're awesome at entrepreneurship, like where would I go?
Mm,
First and foremost, I would definitely focus on a specialty, focus on what you're really good at, and get yourself into other people's businesses that are ones that you potentially would want to work for in that capacity. I
mm,
feel like if I could go back and do something different, I would have really worked on getting a lot more specialized in like my marketing bucket as opposed to just like solely focus on email marketing. Cause at that point I was like, email marketing, social media, what is that? So
mm,
I wish I would have been specialized in like one of the main categories, like, operation team marketing, and then really just expanded and grown and soaked up as much as possible in that one category because I feel like if you know one, you can learn the other two. Like that's easy, right?
yeah,
And so like for me, like I had very little team experience besides, being an assistant manager at a retail shop, which is nothing fancy or crazy and definitely totally different in person versus virtual.
yeah.
But I would definitely say like pick your lane and specialize in that. Get in other people's businesses first and foremost. And I would also play the long game with them. Like I think that's the biggest thing is that a lot of times like we're so I mean at least in my entrepreneurship journey like there was a lot of jumping ship within clients and like we talk about client retention and how important that is. And I
Mm,
would really focus on finding your person and diving all the way in
mm,
and really just focusing on showing them and supporting them in any possible way that you can to be like, hey, I see you're struggling with this. Can I just take it on for you? Like, I'm happy to take it on. And just really focus on just deepening and deepening and deepening that relationship and not being afraid to have the conversation. Like, for me, I didn't have to have the conversation because I got a Slack DM. But for
yeah.
you, I would say, and my team members have even done this to me and I have fully welcomed it where they're like, hey, like, I know that you're struggling with getting this done on time because I know you're doing this, this, and this. I want to take it on for you. Like, could we potentially do that?
Mm,
And talking about what that could look like to expand and being open to having those conversations if you are the founder with your team
yeah.
members of like, where do you really want to go? Like, what do you want to be doing in the next couple of years? Like, how can I support you regardless? If you decide you're going to leave the company tomorrow, I want to make sure that you felt like I supported you to the fullest capacity that I could and giving you everything that I know to be able to make you the best entrepreneur, the best employee, whatever it is that you're going to go do next.
Mm. And, like, I love that you say that even with the aspect of skill sets, because I think that a lot of people have the belief to be a CEO, you have to be basically good at everything. You have to be good at
Mhm.
team, you have to be good at ops, you have to be good at sales, marketing, like, you have to know every department. And what I'm hearing you say is, like, it's really having a mastery at one and an understanding of the others.
Correct. Yeah,
Got it.
100%. Yep.
And with that on a more non-strategic level, so I'm thinking Ashley Hart traits that
Mhm.
inner work traits that have to happen for someone to be a CEO. When I think about in my mind, and I even preparing for today, I was trying to think about, okay, like what your day looks like and all the things you must encounter and the problems you solve and the conversations that you have. yes, there's this strategy portion of like, I know marketing and I know sales and I
Mhm.
know all of these areas, but there's also like the qualities. And I think about it almost to your point earlier, like a partnership of like the qualities you're looking for in another individual that will complement what you value and what you care about. And I'm wondering, and maybe this is connection with obviously you guys and your kind of partnership in business, but I'm also thinking for someone hiring because when we're hiring, we don't necessarily just want to look at what you know, but also who you are. And
Correct.
so I guess my curiosity would be who does someone need to be in themselves, trait wise, value wise, to really either soar at being a CEO or for someone who's looking for that individual, do you think?
I would say number one, definitely having extremely clear boundaries because the business will run you to the ground if you don't. And I went through that process of literally, I lived and breathed the business and there was no room for anything else. And it definitely was like taking a toll on like my mental and physical and all the other health outside of just the business health, where I was like, I'm grinding, I'm doing the things.
Yeah.
And I was essentially people pleasing, creating codependency, like the whole 9 yards, because I didn't have strong boundaries with when I checked my email, how I was going to do this, when I was going to be in circle, all of that.
Mm.
So I would say number one, like you need to be really strong in knowing what is your preferred methods of contact. What are your preferred methods of being able to communicate? What does good communication look like to you? And just getting really clear on like what are your requirements for the founder or for the founder for the operator. And just getting very clear on what that is outside of just like, don't screw me over, give me a 30-day notice. Like the little details that create the tension. That's what I'm talking about, getting super clear on.
Yeah.
So I would say that. I would say the second thing would be resiliency is a huge thing. I feel like you have to know and be prepared for the fires, but you can't be in the fires.
Mm.
And another way to explain that is like, I will watch you go on the roller coaster. Like, you can go on the roller coaster, you can do the loop de loop and the pull and the turn, but like, I don't have to go on the roller coaster with you.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of discipline. That also takes a lot of work emotionally to be able to release and let somebody go, whether it's your client, whether it's your founder, whether it's a teammate, for
Mm.
them to go on the roller coaster, make the mistake, even though you know it's coming, and then have them come back to me and be like, yo, I made a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, it's
Mm.
okay.
How do you do that? How do you see them going and walking off a cliff and both you guys are emotionally in whatever percentage invested in the business, and how do you I guess, in a way, for some reason, it makes me think about parenting, like, you kind of can only
Mhm.
coach so much to a level where it's like they have to have their own experience,
Yeah.
but did that ever get hard in the sense of, like, you want to just kinda be like, "Don't do it, don't do it," or do you kind of feel like from the beginning you've always allowed that process of just each of you having your own ways in which you discover and get your clarity?
So up until the beginning of last year, I would constantly, in my opinion, save George.
Mm,
Always. I would always save him,
mm,
regardless of what bucket or container it was. I was like, I got, like, when I say I got you, I got you.
mhm,
And I lived and breathed by that to the point where it was at my own expense, where I
mm,
was having my own fires and I was letting them burn so I could give him the water to take out his.
mm,
And that was on me 100%, like no fault of his own, totally me. And I would say now I've come to a point where I recognize that it wasn't my fire, it was like my son's fire.
mm,
And for me, it was definitely coming back to my values of like, I talk so much about how much that little boy means to me.
mm,
And at the same point, I'm putting my business partner before my son. And that was an extreme huge like alignment piece where I was like, oh, this is not an alignment. Like, I'm talking one side of my mouth and then doing something completely different. And like, that doesn't work for me.
mm,
And so for me, it was looking at that and like looking at my son and being like, I choose you every single day before everything else.
yeah.
And it was me then intentionally taking the action every single day of choosing him first before anything or anybody else.
Mm. Well, I so resonate with the idea of like if you don't have boundaries around the business will crush you. Because
Mhm.
I think that with all the things that you manage as a CEO, you've got team, you've got marketing, like you're the quarterback of the entire thing. And I think it is different. It's different than just being the head of a marketing department, just being like you just have your small subsection in those opportunities.
Yeah.
Whereas in a CEO role, you're the quarterback and you're responsible indirectly for all the results and what is or is not happening. And so then you, though, also have this other partner who's kind of in it with you, the founder, the visionary. And so when things are working, I can imagine, things are flowing, they're going, you're like, amazing, like we're crushing it, we're
Mhm.
killing it. But I feel like in hard times in a business, it must be difficult to know how to navigate that because you're both in it
Yeah.
and there is division in some aspects, but you're also, like you said, you're so emotionally invested of like, we're in it together, hell or high water, we're gonna make it happen. Say someone's in a situation where like I'm thinking about business owners that I work with. And I even see this with not even CEO roles, but just like general team members. They'll be like, okay, like I
Mhm.
delegated that, that's her thing, this is my thing, and that's it. How do you guys navigate when one person may or may not be doing the thing? And what I mean by that is like I have, people that let's just say they have a coach on their team and they're like, okay, great. Like this coach is somebody who's taking care of the clients, they're doing their thing. And then the clients start to not get results or they're not renewing, they're not referring people. And they're like, so and so needs to step it up. But it's like at the end of the day, you're still in it together in the sense of you're both coaching the same program. So
Mhm.
I guess my deep curiosity, even for myself, about having a CEO, because obviously I don't have one in my business yet, but a deep curiosity that I have is like it's kinda like a partnership, like a romantic relationship. Like if you're in it together, it's like I pick up where you slack and you pick up where I
Yeah.
slack, and that to me is how I envision it. But in a way, when I started to think about it even going into today and prepping for today, I thought, but where's the accountability? Where's the in a business sense,
Mhm.
where's this aspect of like, "No, no, that's yours, like, you handle that." And so, like, even when you brought up boundaries is what made me think of it again.
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate we're in it together, all in, 100%, I got you got me, paired with, but you got your list and I've got my list. Like, how do you guys navigate or and it maybe it's something you're still in the work in progress at, which is totally okay too. It's just like a curiosity of mine when I think about all the businesses that I work with.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to give you the team member answer and then I'm going to give you the George answer because they're different for me.
Okay.
Okay, so for the team member answer, if I had a team member, which I've gone through, for me, I much prefer to waterfall feedback, like water drop before we get to like the whole landing of like, where have you been the past 3 months? Like,
Mm,
I will text you or I'll like Slack you at the 3 day mark and be like, hey, you good? And then if I don't hear like going that route or giving small pieces of feedback before just diving in and being like, we're having a 90-day review. I hope you're ready. Get your notebook. And so for me, I try to nip it in the bud basically as soon as I spot it. And
mm.
so it's like, I think you've said it before, like if you see it, you say it, like just get it out, like just do the thing.
Yeah, my
And
motto
I,
is if you think it, feel it, say it, which by the way goes really well in business, but also very well in just relationships, friendships, relationships, anything. Yeah.
yes. So I usually, well, I wouldn't say usually, I always model that with my team. The only thing that I filter for my team when it comes to communication is I make sure that I am emotionally set, like
Mm,
emotionally grounded before I go to them. Like I don't do emotional reactivity with my team. And I've set that example of like, listen, like if I'm in it and I'm like, what the heck? The podcast didn't go out at 5 a.m. this morning and it's still sitting in draft mode. What the heck? Like
mm.
I make sure that like emotionally I'm good before I go and like message Delia and be like, hey girl, like
Yeah.
did something go on with this with Simplecast? Like what happened?
Yeah.
I know you usually do it, right? And I think there's a difference between a team member who slips up and makes a mistake because they're human and
Mm,
somebody who is like a recurring offender, right? It's like if my son goes through the process of marking with a Sharpie on the wall once, I'm going to be like, hey, bud, like, let's not. But if he's doing it like every 3 days and I'm constantly like having to go to the store to buy magic erasers, like, we got a problem. Like, we're going to talk about this. Like, we're sitting down.
Yeah.
So I think there's a difference there. For George, originally the to-do list became, oh, you haven't done it, so let me just reassign them to Ashley. I'll do that.
Mm.
It's fine. And like it would come to the point where I was just like trying to figure out how to manipulate videos so I didn't actually need him. I was like, is
Mm.
AI up to speed yet? Because like if we can, like we're gonna do that, you know?
Yeah.
And now I have come to the point where I let him live in his world of his choices
Mm. Mhm.
because I decide every single day that I'm going to show up for this business, that I'm going to put my 110% in and do the
Yeah.
things that I promised I was going to do.
Mm.
And it's not my job to enroll him into that same vision. He has to decide that for himself. And I'm not saying or implying, like, I want to be clear that he's not, because that would be me speaking for him. And
Mhm.
I do believe that he is. But in general, if we're having this conversation around, like, if he wasn't doing the things, I would let him live in it
Yeah,
and be
and
like,
and
hey,
vice versa maybe, in the sense of,
oh,
like, if
100%. He would let me live in my choices too.
yeah,
100%.
maybe him for you too, right? And,
Mhm.
you mentioned the emotional regulation piece, which I just wanted to go back to because I always associate CEO with pressure. It's the only word that comes to mind is, like, pressure, structure, operating. Like, it's just, like, it really is, like, I just see you holding capacity for so much. And I'm thinking again back to that, like, if you're hiring somebody or if you're trying to be the Ashley in someone's team and be the CEO, was emotional regulation something that you knew from the get-go? In the sense of, like, was that something you came in as a tool in your toolbox with, or was that something you kind of discovered the importance of through this pressure?
I definitely discovered it through this pressure, 100%. Through my entrepreneurship career, I would say, I definitely did know that it was something I needed to work on. Like, I would accidentally send an email out an hour before it was supposed to for a client. And
Mm,
then I would go and cry about it for 3 hours because I was so disappointed in myself. And the client was so disappointed. And I'd create these like rumination stories of like how I'm not good enough and give me evidence for that.
yep.
And so that was a tool that George taught me in this role of like, hey girl, like, no, like go cry about it for 20 minutes and then you're done. Like, move
Mhm.
on. Like, it's not a big deal. It's literally an email. And the saying that always comes up for me is like, we're not saving babies. Like, it's okay. Like, this is
Yeah.
marketing. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like, we can send out another email.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's something that I have had to diligently and intentionally work on because I still struggle with it to this day where I'll like
Mhm.
be in it and then I'll go to send a message. I'll be like, oh, no, I did not. No, 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 no. That's me enrolling somebody else in my drama and story, which does not need to exist for
Yeah.
them. Like,
Yeah.
they don't need to know all of my thoughts and feelings about how our team isn't da 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 when it's reality. It's just a made up story. Nobody thinks
Yeah, I think sometimes when we lack first of all, lack awareness of it, when you don't
that.
even know that this is something that you're doing, you're not paying attention to it, and so you just kind of like blah on you just word vomit on everybody around you by accident. And I definitely myself even, I would say, have been, and at times I'm guilty of this even now. I realize though, like the implication on the rest of the team members when doing your quote unquote venting.
Mhm.
Because when I would vent and be in these moments of like, "Ah!" And, like, even whether it's for you with the team members that obviously you manage and you lead, or if it's with you in partnership with George, the founder, like, I think when we're in these dynamics, something about being in it with someone makes it feel less scary or something.
Mhm.
Like, when I just get to be like, "I'm overwhelmed," and, like, "We need to do this, and this has to happen, and this deadline, and we're behind the following," like, when I just get to, like, blah to somebody else, it somehow makes me feel so much less alone in it, which is the positive for me. But what I found was when I would do that and I would feel so much lighter afterwards because I've shared it, great, like everything's off my chest. I just dumped a like 10-pound load of intensity on someone else's plate and then I signed off and I feel better. And now I've passed the burden of like, here's all of the things that we're navigating. But, anyways, I feel better. Thanks, though. Right? And I didn't
Yeah.
realize, I thought it was like we're all in it together. So we're all going to share it. And, kind of like we were saying earlier with the think it, feel it, say it, I think that's the one area though in business where like you should speak if something that someone's doing is an impact on the business. But I don't always necessarily think that as the CEO, you have to share all the burdens of what you're navigating all the time, everywhere, in every moment. Because
Mhm.
sometimes the way that that player, the team member, the other individual could support you is not by being completely impacted by all the information, but just like, hey, here's how you could be an asset to help me solve this thing. Can you help me with that?
Correct.
So I'm curious for you, do you guys navigate that of kind of like, do you feel like maybe the being in it together sometimes gets blurry around the fact that like we're oversharing, struggles to the point where it's making it harder for certain people to operate? Because I would definitely would say that I'm guilty of that.
100%. 100%. I would say that, yeah, our lines were really blurry until like the beginning of last year, for sure,
Mm.
where it was just constant, like on both sides of just like word vomit this, word vomit that. And then like we would just be like so enrolled into each other's stories of like, well, this is how it's going to be. Like, this is how it is.
Mhm.
And yeah, I fully agree with you. Like, I think there's a time and a place, but then there's also like very much so like a container that you can put yourself in of like, hey, just so you know, like this voice note is me venting. You don't have to listen to it. You don't have to be part of it. I'm going to send you a separate voice note with the actual question I have or the action item that like I'm
Mhm.
thinking through that I could use your support with. And so I feel like, yeah, just buffering that or just creating that container of like, hey, this is me. I'm getting it off my chest, but you don't have to listen to it. Listen to this part instead. I think then creates that where it's like if they're in a good space and they can support you and want to listen to it, they can. But you're
Mm.
also giving them a permission slip of like if they don't feel like they can hold it or have the capacity to hold it, they can just go to the action item and you guys can continue to make momentum and progress.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing is like the momentum and progress when there's two of you in it. I feel like the boundaries aspect is such a big word coming through for me because I think it's boundaries in your roles, boundaries in communication, boundaries in expectations as well. So like I'm thinking, for myself, for example, I don't have kids yet. And so I might work till, to your point, 10 o'clock at night. But yet someone else might be like, "Hey, like, I'm done at 3 for pickup, and, like, after that, I'm not back online till the next day." So, like, I
Mhm.
think boundaries from what I'm hearing are really, like, probably the biggest muscle to flex, skill set to have, and practice that basically needs to be integrated absolutely everywhere for, like, real success with a CEO and a founder partnership.
100%. And
Yeah.
especially the expectation process because when I started, I was like, hey, okay, I'm ready for my job description. Give me the task list. Tell me what I'm doing. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't exist. You have to make it your own. I was like, cool. Again, I don't know how to do that. And so it's like, I was talking to my friend the other day about it, and I was like, that's the thing. Like, I struggle with being able to even like encapsulate everything that I do because I just do it. Like, I just get it done, whatever comes my way. I'm like, done. Yeah, easy. I'll figure it out. That's what YouTube's for.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I definitely do feel that.
What are some of those things? If someone's like, "Okay, like, what could that look like?" Like, if you're thinking about this week or last week, like, what are some of the things or areas or projects that you work on as a CEO?
Oh, I have a list. I have a list.
I love you. Of course you do.
Okay. So some of the main areas that within I work in. So like team, pretty easy, right? So I manage the entire team. I have 3 team members, a graphic designer, a video designer or like a video editor, and then a podcast editor who also doubles with helping me with some of the social content of like scheduling. So like
Mm,
administrative vibes. So I handle the entire team, all their pay, expectations, everything. So if something goes wrong within like any of the work they do, I take ownership over that and I correct it.
mm,
Pretty simple. And then I also handle everything when it comes to like the marketing side. So that's like all of the email marketing campaigns, funnels. That also includes a lot of the social media content. Like I'm the person who creates the entire calendar, the person who like delegates it all out, plans it all out when it comes to like our promotion, social media content, and then also pairing like our assets that we've then created to that and then using George's feedback of the overarching vision to be able to then mold it and bring that to life.
mm,
And then also technically stories on like Monday and Friday. Let's see. I do all the administrative minus finances. I do like all the email customer support. I'm the main person for like our circle community support. I manage all of that. I am also generally the primary contact for all of our one-on-one clients when it comes to like billing, sales questions, and things like that. And then I also do just like normal admin work. So it's like the podcast, everything when it comes to that, like the managing of the guests, making sure all of that's going flow. I mean, basically all of that within the
Say
past.
everything.
Yeah.
Every
I'm
every
trying to
department
think
of the
if there's
business.
anything else. I mean, I handle all the billing for like all the recurring. I collect the feedback. I manage the feedback. I do check-in calls. I do ask Ashley
Mm.
operation calls.
Mm.
I do all the replays. I mean, like,
You're not very busy, basically, is what you're saying.
yeah, we're not busy over here. We're not busy.
Not
And
super
that's the
busy.
thing is that it's so hard because it's like,
I
I mean,
get the job description now because imagine. I like I'm fully like I get the job description because imagine for that job. Look at the job description and be like, you do marketing, you do social, you do podcasts, you do admin, you do clients, you do offer development, you do emails, you do ops, you do systems, you do events. And you're like,
oh yeah,
oh,
I didn't even touch on events. Yeah, that too.
yeah. Yeah. She also, you guys, coordinates plans and is like the complete mastermind behind all the events, like from front to back. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Hmm.
And that leads me to a question that someone did ask me knowing that I was going to be recording this today. How stage-wise do you think a business should be? Like, what stage should a business be at for someone to maybe be considering? Because I think a big misconception, in my opinion, that I hear is that people believe in order to hire a CEO, you have to be this like 6 million, $7 million company. And yes, obviously, big multi-million dollar businesses still do hire CEOs, obviously, because they get to a place where, again, they need to delegate and they need other people. But I'm curious, do you feel that there really is a specific stage only and above that someone can hire a CEO? Or like, where do you think, or maybe an assessment you might consider of when is the right time for someone to consider hiring a CEO for their business?
Hmm. So depending, actually, I want to say depending. I would say at every stage, you can always use a good operator to boss you around,
Mm,
especially as a founder, 100%, because they
yeah.
bring accountability, they create that structure, and they also create that accountability and structure that allows you to feel safe in
Mhm,
being able to execute the vision because you have somebody who's kind of like A plus proofread it and was like, yeah, that, go do that.
mhm, mhm,
And so even if they're not doing the things and they just kind of see it and they're kind of like in a more consulting role versus like the actual like executor role, that can still be supportive 100%.
mhm,
I would say that for me, like I would probably would want somebody who's at least a mid, like six figures and above,
mm.
like mid, like six mid up to seven, like in that range. The reason why I say that specifically is because when you bring somebody else into your chaos, it's just a bigger chaotic mess, right? It's like
Mhm.
if you bring somebody into the fire with you, like they're going to catch on fire as well.
Yep.
And so I would never hire somebody out of desperation. I would hire people out of you knowing, hey, this is exactly where you can come in. Like I've made sure that like everything is laid out for you. Like we're going to waterfall the tasks for you. We're
Mm.
going to drop them one by one. It's
Yep,
not going to be like any impact on your nervous system. Like there's no emergencies here.
yep.
And like they come in feeling all of your support and all of your attention because you have some of those baseline pieces. Because
Mm,
if you're bringing in somebody to have all the ideas, you're just having somebody else proofread your vision, right?
yeah.
And it's like, no, like this is your vision. I'm just here to help you take care of it, like to actually execute it.
I love that. Never hire a CEO out of desperation, only hire out of like elevation, really in my opinion.
Yes.
Also,
Yes.
side note, if you guys listen to my elevation content model, Ashley was the one who named that on one of the previous episodes. So just have to give credit where credit is due. Elevation, it just popped into my brain. I
Yeah.
love that idea of hire a CEO not out of desperation, but out of elevation, elevating the business to the next level. And
Hmm.
just as a piggyback to that, what might someone see happening in their business? I.e., like if you could wave a magic wand and go into a business as a CEO and it be at a certain place when you got there, what does that look like? Because I love the idea of not having it be in a state of chaos, not having it be in fires everywhere, and then expecting like this person to be like your savior who comes in and fixes it. But if someone was going to have you come into the business and you were going to partner with a business, what would be kind of like things that you might, as a CEO, be looking for to say, okay, like this feels like it's like a solid ground to land?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say the first one would be a solid, like main signature offer. That is number one. You
Mm,
could be in a place where you're at capacity with that signature offer. and wanting to expand and be like, hey, I do one-on-one coaching. I now want to do group coaching. Like, I'm going to bring you in to help me with the group coaching aspect. Again, thinking about expansion, same thing with like marketing, right? Like, you have one primary platform that you're like doing the things on, you're crushing at it. Now you either want to increase the frequency of the amount of content you want to create, or you're wanting to expand to another platform. And so for me, it would come from a place of like, we have like solid income that's coming in through. We have a solid track record of being able to hold and sustain team members and retain them. And we can also like comfortably say that like this is working, and now we're just tweaking, continually testing. And I think the other part of that is like really having a hunger for growth and being able to have the hard conversations of like, just because it worked previously doesn't mean it's always going to work. The worst thing that I could ever put myself into is into a business that is so married to the idea of how they do business that they're not willing to actually hear or understand my point of view.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah,
That the person is like, "Here's my vision, I'm giving it and passing it off to you," versus, "I get half the piece of paper, you get the other half, and, like, let's create a co-vision together."
exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Ugh, it's so good. Okay. Someone's listening and they're like, "Okay, I'm inspired. I'm either thinking about becoming a CEO or I'm really highly considering hiring one for my business." If you were to give one nugget to all the entrepreneurs that are listening right now, when it comes to either being a better operator, hiring an operator, if you were to give them like one nugget, what would that be?
One nugget.
In
Mm.
any bucket, because I know that you work with all kinds of different businesses, all kinds of different stages, and you have been in so many businesses. And so I would love just of all the Ashley wisdom, a nugget of something that you know would really help a founder who's listening right now.
I would say the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is like, this is just a season. And I think in every single part of my entrepreneurship career, I've gotten so caught up in the fact that like, this is it. This is how it's always going to be. Whether it be the fact that I was working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., the days that I was just like, I don't know when my next like money is going to come to pay my electric bill. And like just thinking through the whole process, I would say, yeah, just be open. Like, be so open to what the possibility could be. Be open to the things that land in front of you, because I could not imagine my life if I had said no or been like, no, I'm done. Like, I'm out.
Mhm.
Like, that scares me too much. You know, like, why is he asking me this?
Yeah.
Yeah, just be open. Just be open to the journey and don't get so attached to the post-it notes.
Mm. I love that, especially in a time where so many people, 2025, have created vision boards and ideas of, like, it has to look like this bucket, that bucket, and I think, like, to me, at least, a common theme that I see all the time with entrepreneurs is, like, it was never intentional. Like, it all just happened by accident for most people. Some people, yes, were, like, since they were, like, 7, knew they wanted to be a business owner. There's a few of those oddballs, but, like, for most people in entrepreneurship or in any aspect of being connected to a company, never really saw it being the thing that they always wanted to do, and yet the opportunity was right there in front of them, and I love the feedback of the season because I also my brain instantly, as you said that, went to the other side, which was also recognizing that if you're having a good seasons also just like bad seasons come to an end and the light is at the end of the tunnel, there's also good seasons where I think entrepreneurs get so invested in like what's working, like to your point, you get super emotionally connected to what's working right now, the way you've always done things, the offers you've always sold, the way you've always marketed. And then things change and you're like, no, 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 this is not happening right now when it gets really uncomfy. And I think that's also something that at least just resonates for me when it comes to season is remembering that like tough seasons are followed by good ones, but good ones also don't mean that the tough one is not somewhere around the corner at some point.
Yeah, it's really about unattachment, right? And I think that's also like a huge part of this conversation as well too, is like just becoming unattached to the way that you do business and how you show up. And I think unattachment and boundaries are the same thing, because it's like you can be unattached to the outcome and how we're going to make it there and still hold your boundaries and be like,
Mhm.
okay, but like in this rectangle, we're going to do this, right? And so, yeah, just being unattached to, you know, the things that are happening, the things that are coming your way, the conversations clients are having with you, just being like, okay, yeah, 100%. Like, I see how you feel that way. And like, let's
Yeah.
work together to find a solution.
Yeah. I love it. So good, Ashley. So good. Okay. Well, obviously, as you guys are listening, hence why I was so excited to have her on because she just knows so much. And I hope this was inspiring for any of you who are either thinking about hiring a CEO. Maybe you want to be the Ashley in another business. And so I hope today gave you a little bit of a roadmap of things to consider. Ashley, thank you so, so much for coming on. Today was so good. So
Oh,
good.
my honor. Thank you
I
so
have
much.
notes. I have notes. I don't have a CEO. And so I was like, I either can be a better one or also gives me things to consider when it comes to hiring one. So today was epic. Thank you. And as always, you guys, we will see you in next week's episode. And if you guys do have any questions, feel free to shoot Ashley a message. Her socials will be linked below. Obviously, as you guys know, I always love hearing from you, any takeaways that you have of episodes like today. And as always, stay ambitious.